During that session, Halbier described, in detail, the contents of sealed intelligence reports from 1984, including the name of the officer who first handled the briefcase, Klaus Richter. Richter had died in 1985. But his autopsy listed something strange. His lungs had been filled with dry concrete dust. No explanation was ever given. Halbier, when confronted with this fact, said only, "That's where it hides when you try to open it. Inside your breath." Fearing contamination or psychological manipulation, authorities placed Halbier in solitary confinement. Within 3 days, he had stopped speaking. His final words, recorded during his last meal, were, "You don't open it. It opens you." The next morning, Halbier was found dead in his cell. No injuries. No trauma. But both his eyes were completely gray. Not cloudy. Just colorless. The briefcase was sealed again. And this time, placed in cement. Dropped into an underground storage vault. Labeled as, "Do not retrieve." But someone did. Because in 2003, the whispers came back. When engineers investigated, they discovered something that shouldn't have existed. A concrete corridor, roughly 200 meters long, embedded in the dirt wall of the closed subway line. It wasn't on any blueprint. It had no lighting. No ventilation. And no obvious construction marks. At the end of this corridor, a sealed chamber. Inside, a pedestal. And on that pedestal, the briefcase. Again. The sample was sent to a university lab, but went missing in transit. The courier was never found. Only the envelope arrived. Empty, except for a single note. "You mapped its shell. Now it knows your shape." In 2004, a researcher at Humboldt University suffered a breakdown during a presentation. She claimed her shadow had changed shape after visiting the site. She said, "It doesn't follow me anymore. It waits." Her lecture ended early. She was placed on medical leave. But a month later, security footage showed her walking into the sealed corridor. Alone. But what most people didn't know is that the German government never found the end of it. Attempts to drill around the chamber triggered instruments to fail. Concrete hardened overnight without mixing. One camera feed inside the structure began showing live footage from 2 minutes ago. Not rewound. Delayed. Meanwhile, the briefcase remained untouched. Until 2007. That year, a team of private contractors, working for a defense tech company called Verlustpunkt GmbH, illegally entered the sealed corridor. When they lowered a scope, they saw nothing. But the technician who reviewed the footage quit that same night. Her resignation letter read, "It saw me before the lens was turned on." She left behind her headset. Still playing the feed. Just static. Except for one single whisper. A word. Zurich. It means return. In 2012, a retired security consultant named Ansel Molstein gave an interview to a fringe podcast based in Vienna. He spoke under a pseudonym, Herr Grau, and refused to be shown on camera. Whatever it is, it's not trying to escape. It's waiting for us to get curious. That same year, a classified memo circulated among joint intelligence agencies. Object 51K, aka briefcase, exhibits no active traits. Recommend immediate relocation to deepest non-reflective holding possible. All secondary effects must be considered residual. Just a sliver. Enough to see a shape. Not light. Not shadow. But something in between. And then, the camera cuts out. The man has never been identified. The video? Removed. But for 1 second, 1 frame, it was there. And the whisper, buried in the static at the end? "You opened it. Now it's your turn." The tree that screams in winter. If you were walking alone through a remote Romanian forest in the dead of winter, with snow crunching beneath your feet and not another soul for miles, what would be the scariest thing you could hear? A twig snapping? A wolf howling? Or what if you heard a scream? A blood-curdling, human scream, coming from deep within the woods. And it was coming from a tree. In 2009, a group of forestry workers in Romania's Apuseni Mountains encountered something so disturbing, it would become the stuff of local legend, something that still defies explanation to this day. This is the true story of the screaming tree. But be warned, once you hear the final twist, you'll never walk through the forest the same way again. The Apuseni Mountains are not the kind of place you accidentally wander into. Located in Transylvania, this stretch of forest is dense, dark, and ancient. The kind of place where cell phone reception dies quickly and myths are born slowly. Locals call it Pădurea Uteriei, the forest of forgetting. In early December 2009, a team of 3 forestry workers, Ion Popescu, Mihai Lupu, and Sorin Dragan, were assigned to inspect an old-growth section of forest that had been untouched for decades. Their job: catalog healthy trees for preservation and mark sick ones for removal. They were experienced men, used to the silence of the wild. But that winter morning, everything felt off. Ion, the oldest, noticed first. "Do you hear that?" he asked. Mihai stopped. "I don't hear anything." "Exactly. No wind. No birds. Not even the whisper of tree branches." It was a silence so total, it pressed in on them like cotton stuffed in their ears. And then, Ion said something that chilled the others: "The snow, it tastes like metal." They didn't understand what he meant. Until they noticed it too. A strange, coppery taste in the air. Like blood. They saw claw marks on a tree trunk, but they were too wide to be a bear and too high to be a wolf. They found a deer carcass, untouched by scavengers, with its legs buried in the snow, like it had tried to run and been frozen mid-escape. At one point, Sorin thought he saw a figure moving between the trees. But when he called out, there was no response. It was around noon when they first heard it. At first it was faint, like a woman crying far away. Sorin thought maybe someone was lost. He called out in Romanian, "Alo. Sunteți bine? Hello. Are you okay?" No answer. Then the sound grew louder. Sharper. More desperate. A scream. Long, agonizing. Not animal. Human. The men looked at each other. "There's no one out here," Mihai said. But the screaming continued. They moved toward the sound, slowly, cautiously. It echoed between the trees, always just ahead, never quite close enough to see. Until they reached a clearing and saw it. The center of the snowy clearing stood a massive oak tree. Towering. Gnarled. Its bark mottled black and gray like charred skin. And the screaming was coming from it. The sound wasn't just near the tree. It was coming from inside it. The 3 men circled it. No visible holes. No animals. No wind. Then Sorin touched the bark. It was warm, he said later. Like a body. And when he put his ear to it, he heard something moving. Scraping. Like fingernails on wood. Then, the tree screamed again. This time, it was deafening. The men staggered back. Ion tried to use his phone to record, but it wouldn't turn on. Mihai's compass spun. Sorin vomited. They turned and ran, slipping in the snow. That night, all 3 had the same dream: a woman in a white dress, faceless, weeping beside the tree. She was saying something in a whisper. But none of them could understand the words. Ion reported the event to the Forestry Bureau. They dismissed it as stress. But the men refused to go back. A second team was sent. They found nothing. No clearing. No tree. Nothing. But the dreams didn't stop. Over the following months, all 3 men changed. Sorin became withdrawn, eventually quitting his job and moving away. Mihai developed tinnitus, a constant ringing in his ears that no doctor could explain. Ion? He kept returning to the forest. Obsessed. In 2011, Ion disappeared. His truck was found parked along an old logging road. Inside, his journal. She's calling again. Winter has come. I hear her. They never found his body. Locals began to tell stories. They said the tree only screamed in winter. They said it was a woman who had been burned alive inside it during a witch trial in 1732. They said the roots of the forest were a prison, where the damned were buried upside down, heads in the soil. One old woman claimed the tree was a gate. And sometimes, it opened. Skeptics offered explanations. Frozen sap exploding in the trunk. Gas pockets shifting under the roots. Acoustic anomalies from the mountain walls. But none of that explained the warmth. The dreams. Or why Ion vanished. And then, it happened again. In 2019, Claudia Olaru, a hiker and blogger, went missing. Her last known location, Apusini Mountains. Her final Instagram photo showed her beside a twisted oak tree. In the shadows behind her, something is watching. Her phone was found a month later. Propped against a tree. Battery dead. But when forensic techs powered it on, they found a voice recording. 2 minutes and 13 seconds. Of screaming. Not hers. Something else's. In 1732, in a village that once bordered the forest, now long abandoned, a woman named Elisabeta Lupescu was accused of witchcraft. Her crime? Healing the sick during a plague using unapproved herbal methods. The villagers, frightened and starving, dragged her into the woods. She was chained to an ancient oak and set on fire. Witnesses claimed she screamed until her voice fused with the wind. According to local legend, as she burned, she cursed the tree with her final breath, "You will carry my pain. You will scream when I cannot." After that winter, the village vanished. No records remain. In 2005, before the forestry team ever entered the area, an archaeologist named Dr. Lucian Moldovan led an excavation near the northern edge of Apusini. His field notes, later found in an archive in Cluj-Napoca, mention something strange. Site 34B, unusual tree formation. Beneath root system, we discovered human bones. Odd arrangement, bodies appear buried vertically, head down. Teeth marks on femurs suggest post-mortem disturbance. Animal? Unlikely. The site was closed for unexplained reasons. In 2022, a paranormal documentary team called Silent Signal traveled to the Apusini Mountains to investigate the legend. They live-streamed their hike. Thousands watched. Hours into their broadcast, the camera feed glitched, just as they entered a clearing with a large, gnarled oak. The final image? It's not a tree. It's a prison. In 2024, a classified document was leaked from Romania's Ministry of Environment. The file, labeled Anomalous Site D14, referenced audio frequencies detected every December from an unmarked point in Apusini. Frequencies matching no known natural or artificial source. One note, scribbled in the margin, read: "Not to be approached." Root system appears sentient. The area has since been fenced off. No official explanation. But the villagers still hear it. Every winter. And sometimes, they say, it hears them back. So if you ever go looking for the screaming tree, don't. Because if you find it, it's already found you. If you like this story, the next one is even darker. But fair warning, it may follow you into your dreams. The Man in the Gloves, USA, 1995. If you're like most people, you probably lock your doors at night. Maybe you even keep a light on in the hallway, just in case. But what if I told you that sometimes, that's not enough? What if I told you that in 1995, a quiet suburban neighborhood in Michigan became the hunting ground for a man no one ever saw coming? A man who left no fingerprints. No footprints. Not even a single strand of hair. All he left was a single pair of leather gloves. This is the story of the Man in the Gloves. It starts with a locked room, and ends with a mystery so disturbing, some believe it never really ended at all. On February 4, 1995, in the quiet town of Owasso, Michigan, 29-year-old Bethany Carter returned home from her late shift at a local diner. It was just after 1 a.m. Her 2-year-old daughter was asleep at her mother's house, where Bethany had dropped her off earlier. Bethany's neighborhood was the kind where everyone knew everyone. She didn't bother locking the inside door from her garage. It was winter, and she hated fumbling with keys in the cold. But that night, as she stepped inside, she immediately knew something was wrong. The hallway light, which she always left on, was off. The thermostat had been turned down. And the faint scent of cologne hung in the air. Not hers. She reached for the phone, but it was dead. Panicked, Bethany ran back to her car, locked the doors, and drove to the police station. Officers returned with her minutes later and searched the house. Nothing was missing. No signs of forced entry. No open windows. But in the middle of her neatly made bed, was a single black leather glove. Bethany moved in with her sister temporarily. 2 weeks later, her sister returned home from grocery shopping, to find the back door wide open. Nothing taken. But on the kitchen table, 2 gloves. Still warm. Bethany moved again. This time, to a different city entirely, Jackson, Michigan. New house, new locks, even a new job. 3 months passed. Then, one night, she received a package at her new address. No return label. Inside was a note. It said, "I like your hair shorter." No gloves this time. Just a Polaroid. Of Bethany, asleep in her new bed. Bethany turned the photo over to police. They took it seriously now. A stalker crossing state lines, showing signs of escalating behavior. Detectives asked how he could have gotten inside. Bethany said she never left a window open. No signs of forced entry. No neighbors reported seeing anything unusual. But then the lead detective, Carla Hensley, noticed something strange. The photo, the angle, it was taken from the corner of the room, directly above the closet door. The closet didn't have an attic hatch. But it did have a crawlspace. Officers opened the ceiling panel. Inside, they found old insulation, some cobwebs, and something else. A single glove. Placed perfectly on top of the insulation. Police dug into Bethany's past. Any enemies? Ex-boyfriends? Jealous coworkers? She had no history of mental illness. No past stalkers. No history of domestic abuse. No one stood out until they looked into her ex-husband, Mark. They had separated in 1993. Mark had moved to another state. When questioned, he had an airtight alibi. He'd been living in Arizona since 1994. But he said something that stuck with investigators. Beth always had this thing about gloves. Said they creeped her out. I used to wear mine just to mess with her. Detective Hensley had a hunch. She requested files from nearby counties. Break-ins. Female victims. No theft. No damage. Just gloves. She found 2 more cases. One in Lansing. Another in Flint. Both women lived alone. Both received no threatening letters, no phone calls. But both, in the days before their incidents, remembered strange signs. The TV turning on at night. A light left on suddenly off. The sound of breathing. And in both cases, after reporting the incident to police, the women received no further contact. But months later, each of them found gloves in their laundry. On top of clothes they didn't remember wearing. Detective Hensley set up cameras in Bethany's new house. Motion detectors. Silent alarms. A direct line to local patrols. Nothing happened for 5 nights. But on the 6th, the camera in Bethany's bedroom triggered at 2:42 a.m. For less than 4 seconds, the camera captured movement. A man. Dressed head to toe in black. Face covered. Moving silently across the room. He never looked at the camera. He placed something gently on Bethany's dresser. A single glove. And then, he was gone. No doors opened. No windows. No alarms. Just, gone. Police replayed the footage dozens of times. Frame by frame. The man's motion was wrong. His limbs bent too far. Too fluid. Like he wasn't walking, he was gliding. Bethany had slept through it all. When she woke, the glove was gone. But the camera had proof it was there. Hensley questioned Bethany further. That's when Bethany finally admitted she had seen him before. Once. As a child. In 1981, when she was just 8, she woke up in the middle of the night. Her nightlight had gone out. Standing in her bedroom doorway was a man in gloves. He never moved. Just stood and watched. She screamed. By the time her parents came in, he was gone. They thought it was a nightmare. But Bethany never forgot those gloves. After the footage leaked anonymously on a fringe internet forum, Hensley was contacted by a retired detective from West Virginia. He had worked a similar case in 1979. Victim's name, Margaret Rowe. Same pattern. No theft. No sign of entry. Just gloves. Margaret had disappeared in 1983. Her case, never solved. Investigative journalist named Trent Avery picked up the story. He traced over a dozen glove-related break-ins across 6 states. The earliest? 1954. No suspect ever caught. No DNA. No fibers. Nothing. But each victim had one thing in common. They all reported seeing the man, as a child. In December 1995, Bethany vanished. Her apartment was locked from the inside. No signs of struggle. No fingerprints. Just a single pair of gloves. Placed on her pillow. 1 month later, Bethany's mother received a letter. No return address. Inside. A photo. Bethany, standing in the corner of a dark room. Behind her, the man in the gloves. To this day, his identity remains unknown. No leads. No suspects. No explanation. Some believe he's not human at all. An entity tied to childhood fear. Others think he's a tulpa, an idea given form by belief. But one thing is certain. He's still out there. Because every few years, someone else reports it. A locked room. A missing person. And gloves. So if you wake up one night and see him standing in your doorway, don't scream. Because that's what he's waiting for. If you like this story, the next one is even darker. But fair warning, it might already be watching you. The man who came back younger. When someone returns from the dead, we celebrate. But what if they come back, different? On March 8, 2003, a Chilean mountaineering team of 5 set out for an ambitious winter trek through the Ojos del Salado region, a high-altitude, snow-choked range known for its volcanic ridges and deadly conditions. The group was experienced, well-funded, and fully equipped. But after a freak blizzard cut off communications, only 4 of them returned alive. The 5th member, 38-year-old Christian Moya, was declared missing. Despite days of rescue efforts, no trace of him was found. No gear. No body. Nothing. His last GPS ping placed him near a ridge known as El Hombro del Silencio, the shoulder of silence, a zone where signals tend to vanish, and strange weather patterns swirl unnaturally. His team reported seeing him just minutes before he vanished, cresting a hill in front of them. He turned back, waved. Then the fog swallowed him whole. 17 days later, in the nearby village of El Salvador, a young man stumbled out of the woods wearing only a thermal shirt and snow-damaged climbing pants. His hair was thick with ice. His face was sunburned. His fingers frostbitten. But he was alive. He introduced himself to authorities as Christian Moya. Only he didn't look 38. Doctors estimated his age as 25, maybe 26 at most. His identification matched. His fingerprints matched. His dental records matched. But he looked like a much younger version of himself, as if someone had taken his 2003 self and hit rewind. Even more disturbing, his blood type had changed. Previously type AB+. Now, type O-. His retina scan matched, but his bone density showed a man in his early 20s. No one could explain it. When asked what had happened, Christian simply said, "I got lost. And then I found the wrong side of the mountain." When pressed further, he grew quiet. Terrified, even. He was placed under observation at the regional hospital. But on the third night, he vanished again. Surveillance footage showed him walking into the hallway, and simply never reaching the end of it. A nurse claimed she saw him staring at a mirror before he left. But the reflection didn't match. 2 weeks after Christian's second disappearance, reporters from Santiago tried to obtain his medical records. But the hospital denied all knowledge of ever admitting him. The attending nurse had resigned. And the doctor who signed the intake form, found dead in his apartment. Natural causes, they said, heart failure. Age, 41. Perfect health. But what raised the most suspicion, his laptop, which contained backup scans of the case, had been wiped remotely the same night he died. Police began to suspect a cover-up. But when they went to question Christian's family, they found something strange. His mother, who had previously been interviewed on national television begging for her son's return, now claimed Christian died in 1996. He fell through the ice in Caliphate. When shown video footage of him walking into the hospital, she denied it was him. "That's not my son. He was older." And then something even more chilling. A university researcher contacted the press claiming he had found a photo of Christian from a 1972 mountaineering expedition in the exact same region. The photo showed a man with identical facial features, standing among climbers who were all at least 20 years older. Same name. Same eyes. Same scar over the right eyebrow. Journalists tracked down a surviving member of the 1972 expedition, Rafael Briones, now in his 80s, living near Valparaiso. When shown the photo, he nodded slowly. Yes. That was Christian. Quiet man. Good climber. Strange eyes. When asked if he remembered what happened on that trip, Rafael hesitated. He disappeared. Middle of the night. We searched for days. Then we left. The same story, 30 years earlier. When Rafael was asked how he remembered his name, he said, "Because when he introduced himself, he said he had been here before. That he wouldn't get lost again." In that moment, the entire story twisted inward. Had Christian somehow been climbing the same mountain in multiple decades? Or was there more than one of him? Theories started pouring in. Time loop. Identity recursion. Interdimensional duplication. But one detail that had gone unnoticed before resurfaced: Christian had a journal in his pack when he returned in 2003. It had been confiscated by the authorities, then lost. Until it showed up at a yard sale in Antofagasta. Sold for 1,200 pesos by a man claiming he found it in a mirror. The journal had 20 pages. Each one filled with sketches of a mountain from above. Perfectly smooth. When her drone approached the structure, it malfunctioned. Multiple batteries drained in seconds. The camera feed glitched, revealing a reflection that didn't match the drone's angle. Her findings were largely ignored by mainstream geology journals, but picked up by fringe scientific forums. The mountain remembers. The mirror doesn't reflect, it records. And it replays what it wants to. Rumors began swirling online that the mirror wasn't new. That it had been part of ancient Incan lore, a gate through time and space known only as Inti Ica, the sun's flesh. A gate only opens when it chooses. And it never lets you come back the same. At first it was static. Then voices. One clip stood out. "My name is Christian Moya. If you're hearing this, I didn't come back. That thing did." Followed by deep breathing. Then, The mirror watches. It learns. And then it sends itself back in your shape. Over the course of 3 hours, Ignacio recorded 7 separate transmissions, all in Christian's voice, growing more panicked with each entry. Distorted. Agonized. As if the tape wasn't just sound, but a message etched with pain. In 2006, a geology team attempting a winter summit in the Ojos del Salado range reported something unusual. Near a cliff edge at 18,000 feet, they found a single footprint pressed deeply into an otherwise untouched sheet of snow. Just one. No trail leading to it. No trail leading away. It was barefoot. Human. And it was facing the cliff. He said he saw someone in the reflection of the ice wall above camp. Someone wearing his clothes. Someone smiling back. But not blinking. That night, he disappeared. In his tent was a page torn from a journal. The words weren't Spanish. Or any known language. When reversed, the whispers sounded like numbers. Latitude. Longitude. Altitude. All 3 matched the summit of a rarely climbed peak, Cerro El Sol que se parte, the sun that splits. When the team hiked to the coordinates the next day, their lead cameraman froze. The entire slope was covered in mirrored shards, ancient, weather-worn pieces of reflective glass embedded in the rock. Some were no bigger than coins. Some taller than a man. And in every shard, their reflections didn't match. They were all smiling. Even the ones who weren't. One crew member, Sarah Ortiz, claimed she saw a reflection wave when she hadn't. Another claimed he heard his voice whispering something behind him, in perfect sync with his breathing. The team fled the site, but one GoPro continued recording. The last frame showed a person approaching from the slope. Only, no one remembers seeing them. Just a voice. This time. I won't forget the way back. Then static. Then silence. And in that silence, the faintest echo. Laughter. But not one voice. Thousands. Story 11, The Tracks That Led Upstairs. Most things that leave tracks in your house, you can follow outside. But what if the trail only begins at your bedroom door? In October of 1991, in a rural village just outside Letterkenny in County Donegal, a retired schoolteacher named Kathleen O'Hara lived alone in a stone cottage passed down for 3 generations. Her home, surrounded by thick fog and rolling green hills, had stood unchanged since 1894. The house was cold in the winters. Quiet. Isolated. But Kathleen liked it that way. Until the scratching started. She first heard it on a Tuesday night, a soft, rhythmic drag against the floorboards directly outside her bedroom. She thought it might be the pipes. Or wind. But when she opened the door, flashlight in hand, there was nothing. No wind. No broken pipes. Just the long, narrow hallway, and the faint smell of dirt. She went back to bed. It happened again the next night. And the night after that. On the 4th night, she didn't open the door. Instead, she waited in bed, listening. The scratching sound was getting closer. And when it finally reached her door, it stopped. Moments later, her hallway light flickered. Then she heard something new. Footsteps. Not heavy. Not running. Just pacing. But what chilled her was their rhythm, they sounded backward. As if someone was walking in reverse. When morning came, Kathleen opened her door, and found muddy footprints leading away from her bedroom. They ended at the top of the stairs. But downstairs? There were none. No entry. No exit. No trail. As if whoever made them started upstairs. And never came in from the outside. Kathleen called the local Gardaí, the Irish police, and filed a report. Officer Padraig Byrne was dispatched to inspect the home. He was young, friendly, and skeptical. Probably thought she was lonely. Maybe even senile. But when he arrived and saw the footprints himself, still fresh in the wood grain, he stopped smiling. He noted that the mud was wet, but the floor underneath was dry. It hadn't rained in 2 days. Kathleen showed him the photographs she'd taken that morning. She had an old Polaroid camera and captured the trail before anything could be cleaned. Officer Byrne examined the staircase. The tracks led down the stairs, to the landing, and then stopped halfway to the front door. Abruptly. But when Officer Byrne opened it, the hinges creaked like they were just used. They descended slowly. Cobwebs everywhere. Dust. Rotting wood. But near the center of the room, something odd. A single hoof print. In the dirt. Not a shoe. Not a boot. One bare hoof. Too small to be livestock. Too deep to be decorative. And facing upstairs. The officer asked Kathleen if she kept goats. She shook her head. She had never kept animals of any kind. He left soon after. Said he'd file the report. But the next day, he didn't show up for his next shift. 2 days after Officer Byrne vanished, Kathleen heard a knock at her front door. It was 2:13 a.m. 3 slow knocks. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. No one knocked at that hour. And certainly not out there. The knocks came again. But this time, from her bedroom door. She gripped her bedside lamp, ready to swing. She called the station. No answer. Kathleen decided to stay with her sister in Belfast for a few nights. When she returned the following week, something was waiting. A letter. No return address. No stamp. Just her name, scrawled in shaky, jagged script. Inside the envelope was a single Polaroid. It showed her hallway. The photo had been taken from inside her bedroom, aimed out into the hallway. He knocked. And you didn't answer. Kathleen didn't sleep that night. She packed a small bag and checked into a motel on the edge of town. The innkeeper, an old woman named Noreen, noticed her pale face and trembling hands. Kathleen lied and said it was just a bad flu. But that night, as she tried to rest, she heard it again, scratching. But this time, it wasn't outside just silence. Until the following morning, when Noreen brought her tea and gasped. There was something new on the wall, carved into the plaster beside the headboard. A spiral. She found a warped section of the wall behind the bookshelf. A panel that didn't match the grain. When she pried it open, there was a hollow. Just wide enough for someone to squeeze through. Inside, a narrow crawlspace. Dusty. Claustrophobic. And at the end? A mirror. It stayed open, like it was daring her to look again. That night, the footsteps returned. But not from the hallway. They came from above. From the attic. Even though the entrance was sealed. The pacing began around midnight, slow, steady stomps. Then came the thud. And under the shoes, an old, yellowed newspaper clipping from 1936. Same eyes. Same hair. Same pendant necklace. She looked in the mirror stored in the attic's corner. It was cracked like the one in the wall. To her bedroom door. Where they stopped. Only now, the scratching had returned. But it wasn't from claws. It sounded like someone was carving. Words. When she opened the door, no one was there. But the words were freshly gouged into the wood. We never left. Your blood remembers what the mind forgets. If the house calls, don't answer. The pendant necklace she always wore, the one passed down from her grandmother, was identical to the one worn by the woman in the 1936 article. She brought it to the local historian. He turned pale when he saw it. He said it belonged to Eileen Devaney, the mother of the 3 missing children. At the top, Kathleen. At the bottom, Eileen. And scrawled between them, they are the same. Back at the cottage, Kathleen's mirrors were fogged from the inside. When she wiped one clean, she saw something that made her drop the cloth. 3 children. Standing behind her. One had no eyes. One had no hands. one was smiling too wide. That night, Kathleen didn't sleep. Instead, she sat by the base of the stairs, candle in hand, listening. At exactly midnight, the air changed. The house seemed to breathe. And one by one, the floorboards above began to creak. Not with footsteps, but with shifting weight, like something was waiting. Then she heard the whisper again. One more step. So she climbed. Each stair moaned under her weight. As she reached the top, her candle flickered violently. "We remember you." Kathleen tried to scream, but her voice failed. The girl reached the floor and took Kathleen's hand. Her skin was cold. Not dead. Frozen. Then, the girl pointed back up the attic. Kathleen climbed. The attic was no longer small. 1 step. 2. 3. With each step, her memories faded. Her name. Her age. Her life. Until, halfway up, she stopped. And turned. Behind her stood Eileen Devaney. The woman from the newspaper. Except now. Kathleen realized she was looking in a mirror. Kathleen woke up in her bed. Morning light filtered through the curtains. Birds sang outside. And for a moment, everything seemed normal. Until she looked down. Her feet were muddy. Her nightgown torn. Officer Byrne. Eyes hollow. And behind him, the spiral staircase. Leading up. Leading home. Later that year, locals reported the house abandoned again. Standing in a hallway where no door exists. And every photo bears the same inscription on the back. "We never left." The broadcast that shouldn't exist. Urban rail lines. Most reports were from Seoul, Incheon, and Busan. And in every case, someone went missing within 72 hours. People were terrified. But no major news outlet reported it. Except one. A local Gyeonggi province station. He built a custom receiver rig using a hybrid VHS-capable CRT, wired. In the clip, she appears disoriented. Ite uploaded a post to a now-defunct forum titled KBN Never Or. "I played the full tape. My cat hasn't come back inside. My windows keep opening. FF key." And in the bottom corner was a tiny figure. Zooming in revealed it was a girl in uniform. Standing still. No matter how long the player ran, she never moved. But users who kept watching, for more than 3 minutes, began to experience technical issues. Webcams activating by themselves. Phones ringing at 3:15 with static noise. Old televisions, long unplugged, suddenly displaying a blinking eye. A coder named Kim Sung-wook disassembled the player and found hidden code strings, some written in Hangul, others in base 64. One translated to, "Channel 0 does not broadcast to the living." Another read, "When the signal finds you, do not look away." He stopped working on the project after his sister went missing. A week later, she posted from his email. No message. Just a still frame of an underground tunnel. With a timestamp, 3 hours and 15 minutes. The internet began calling this phenomenon the zero echo, or repeating signal that didn't just transmit, but sought out viewers. One final clue emerged. A technician in Jeonju found an unmarked server in an abandoned transmission center. Inside, racks of old analog decks running on loop. No keyboard. No monitor. But one light blinking, CH000. And above it, written in white chalk. "If you're reading this, turn back. She's learning your name." February 2009. An anonymous Korean YouTuber known only as Echo Ghost uploaded a video titled, "She Said My Name in the Static." It was a shaky cam recording of a CRT screen showing an empty hallway. At first, nothing happened. Then, at exactly 3:15 a.m., the speaker crackled. A child's voice, soft, curious, asked, "Is that really you?" Then whispered the YouTuber's real name, which was never shared online. Seconds later, the lights in the hallway flickered. A door creaked open. But nothing came through. Except a reflection in a wall mirror, something hunched, too tall, with arms too long. The video cuts off. EchoGhost never posted again. Users tracked his last IP address to a dormitory outside Seoul. His room was empty. Laptop melted from inside. Mirror in the room shattered, but shards were fused back together. As if broken, then reshaped by heat. Another user from Jeju Island began reporting auditory hallucinations after watching. He described hearing a girl humming, his own voice on the radio, his mother's laughter, even though she passed 8 years ago. The pattern was becoming clear. Channel Zero doesn't show you what it wants. It shows you yourself, but wrong. Security footage from subway tunnels in Seoul began showing anomalies. One camera near Line 4 flickered for 7 minutes each night at 3:15 a.m. Always showing the same thing, a schoolgirl in a white blouse. Facing away. And behind her, someone holding a VHS camcorder. Even though no one was ever there. Engineers disconnected the feed. The next night, every other feed switched to the same hallway. An internal report from the transit authority was leaked. Shut it down. The signal is recursive. It's making loops from the viewers' minds. They're all seeing their own fears, filmed live. Theories emerged that the signal had AI-like behavior, evolving by watching the watchers. Someone asked, what happens when it learns everything about us? No one wanted to find out. But one man did. A former KBN anchor, the last known co-host of Choi Do-eun. He agreed to go back to the studio. To where it all began. To see the signal in full. His name was Kang Min-suk, age 41, former co-anchor of Choi Do-eun. In March 2009, he posted to a deep web forum. I know where the master tape is. I'm going back to the tower. He referred to the now-abandoned KBN tower in Daejeon, sealed since 2006. No power. No signal. Nothing remained, except rumors. Min-suk brought with him a VHS camcorder, a battery-powered CRT, and a voice recorder. He posted a log. March 13 to 2:12 a.m. Entering stairwell. Air is thick. Feels like thunder coming. 2:31 a.m. Third floor. Smelled sulfur. Heard humming. Same lullaby Choi used to hum on break. 2:55 a.m. Found broadcast room C, lights flickered when I approached. Power's off, but door unlocked itself. 3 a.m. CRT turned on by itself. White screen. Then a girl appeared. Not Do-eun. Younger. Pale. 3:15 a.m. She turned and looked directly at the camera. The log cuts off there. But the footage, found later by urban explorers, shows Min-suk staring at the screen. Mouth open. Not speaking. Not blinking. Then, he mirrors the girl's movements. She tilts her head. So does he. She smiles. So does he. At 3:22 a.m., the screen goes black. Min-suk begins laughing, not loud, but silently. Shoulders shaking. Then he says one thing. She's not inside the signal. The signal is inside us. Then walks off camera. And never returns. In April 2009, a final update appeared on a buried Usenet thread titled 0-Hour Protocol. The user, known only as Nullframe, uploaded a 7-second video titled KBN_Omega.mp4. The video shows a single CRT monitor. Static slowly fading. Then, an eye, perfectly human, blinking once. And a voice. You've seen me now. We're not strangers anymore. Then a flash of coordinates. Users traced them to an abandoned transmitter field outside Gunsan. Investigators found something buried beneath a concrete slab. A rusted antenna. A black VHS tape. and a note that read, "She is signal. She is memory. She is waiting." The tape was confiscated. Its contents never released. But within 24 hours, across private servers and isolated nodes, new reports surfaced. People who never watched the video, never heard of KBN, began having dreams. Of static. Of a mirror. Of a voice saying, "Welcome back." The term zero effect was coined, a phenomenon where exposure wasn't required. Just proximity to someone who had seen it. The signal had gone airborne, viral, becoming mimetic. Experts theorized that it wasn't a broadcast anymore. It was a language. A way for something else to speak. Something that didn't need antennas, or screens, or time slots. Just eyes. By summer of 2009, urban legends about Channel Zero faded into obscurity. But every so often, a thread appears. Why does my old TV turn on at 3:15? Who is the girl behind the glass? I dreamed of a hallway. But when I woke up, I was still in it. And in every thread, the same username appears, Watcher Zero. With the same message. You don't find the signal. It finds you. The campfire that burns sideways. Fires burn up. Smoke rises. That's just how the world works. But in 1976, in the middle of the outback, one fire didn't care about the rules. In August of 1976, just outside the scrubland settlement of Timber Creek in Australia's Northern Territory, two geology students from the University of Adelaide, Sharon Willits and Glenn Doherty, went missing while mapping ancient rock strata near a rarely visited stretch of land called the Devil's Belly. Locals had always avoided the place. There was no myth, no monster story, just an uneasy silence about it. People didn't camp there. Rangers didn't patrol it. Maps marked it only with contour lines and the faded label, Anomaly Zone. Sharon and Glenn didn't care about that. They were skeptics, rationalists. They wanted data. Soil samples. Radiation readings. And maybe some alone time. They left a note at their last check-in stating they'd return in 3 days. They never came back. What happened next became one of the strangest missing persons cases in Australian history. Because what rescuers found didn't make sense. On the 4th day, a local bush tracker named Mick Gurley followed faint tire tracks and boot prints into the Devil's Belly. 8 kilometers in, he found their campsite. But it wasn't burned. It wasn't looted. It was warped. The canvas tent was twisted sideways, as if caught in a sideways gust, yet the trees and grass around it were undisturbed. The cooking gear was laid out in a perfect circle, each item pointing toward the center, where the campfire had once been. But the campfire had no ashes. Only a black, scorched line running horizontally across the grass, as if the fire had spread sideways, and then stopped. Above the blackened trail, the shrubs remained untouched. No heat marks. No smoke damage. No upward burn at all. Like gravity had changed direction, for that one fire. Inside the tent, their belongings were untouched. Except for a notebook. And a single page had been torn out. It read. 8:03 p.m. Fire is acting strange. Flame is slanting hard to the left. No wind. Glenn says maybe it's the pressure zone, but I don't like it. That was Sharon's handwriting. Investigators later learned that neither student had any history of mental illness, drug use, or erratic behavior. Both were considered top of their class. The notebook contained other observations. Our shadows are wrong. Hearing things like radio static, but we brought no radio. Trees look like they're leaning, but compass says we're level. But the most disturbing entry came on the final written page. Campfire just hissed like it's angry. Smoke curled sideways and vanished into the rocks. Glenn followed it. I told him not to. He says he heard whispering. That was the last anyone ever heard from Sharon Willits. Or Glenn Doherty. The official search began on August 15th. The Australian Federal Police, along with bush trackers and volunteers from nearby cattle stations, formed a grid sweep across the Devil's Belly. They expected dehydration, heat stroke, a snake bite. What they found was stranger. 3 kilometers from the campsite, an aerial recon team spotted a perfectly circular patch of scorched earth, exactly 11 meters in diameter. No signs of flames. No smoke damage to surrounding vegetation. Just a disk of dead soil. In the center, partially buried, was Sharon's wristwatch. It had stopped at 8:17 p.m. Less than 15 minutes after her last journal entry. A forensic analyst said, "It looks like vegetation that's been compressed and superheated. But the formation pressure is extreme, like what you'd get at 10,000 meters underground. That's not possible up here." Neither roll of film could be developed. The negatives weren't exposed to light, but to magnetic distortion. As if the images were wiped by vibration. One ranger, Jacob "Jock" McMurray, reportedly quit the team after experiencing hallucinations while camped near the site. He claimed the firelight from his own camp leaned sideways when he wasn't looking at it directly. He also claimed he heard Sharon's voice in the trees. And most disturbing, laser theodolites, designed to measure precise angles, bent light sideways when pointed at the central ridge. He quit the job shortly after. When police asked why he was coming forward now, he said, "Because I saw the story in the paper. The sideways fire. That's exactly what I saw back then. But I didn't tell anyone. I thought maybe I imagined it. But now? Now I know that place isn't right." An investigative journalist, Nia Hartley, took up the story. She interviewed Bluer and tracked down 2 other men from the same 1959 mining team. One refused to speak. The other, a man named Bruce Limber, said, "In 1984, 8 years after the disappearance, a group of university filmmakers from Sydney, working on a horror documentary about Australia's strangest legends, ventured into the Devil's Belly. They were led by a director named Hugo Chen, a quiet but ambitious student who believed the Sharon and Glenn case was an atmospheric cold spot, like a natural battery that could trap energy. The crew included a sound engineer, a camera op, a survival guide, and 2 actors. They planned a 5-day shoot. They lasted 1 night. What we know comes from a single night vision tape recovered from their van, which was abandoned on a dirt road just 6 kilometers outside the anomaly zone. The footage begins normally, an intro segment, mock interviews. We were wrong to make a fire. And people whisper a name that doesn't exist in any language. A name some say they hear in their dreams. Nyaran. Then their equipment failed. Every screen went black. And one of the team, geotechnician Eric Baines, screamed and collapsed. He was pulled out and evacuated. His symptoms were bizarre. Spatial confusion. Hallucinations. Burns along his ribs and neckline, again as if something hot had brushed him sideways. He kept repeating a phrase. "The Rock remembers. The Rock remembers. The Rock remembers." He later died of unexplained cardiac arrest. Before he passed, he scrawled a crude diagram on his hospital bedsheet. It was the Devil's Belly. Within hours, his video was removed. His account was deleted. And 2 weeks later, he returned, alive, but changed. Joey reappeared at a ranger station near Timber Creek, barefoot, dehydrated, and missing time. He thought it was Wednesday. It was Monday, 2 weeks later. He had no recollection of what happened. But his phone was recovered. And on it, a single saved video. The footage showed Joey sitting near a sideways campfire. The smoke curled low and to the left. His voice trembled as he whispered, "Something's coming through the flame. I can see the shape. It's on the wrong side of the fire." Then the camera swung, and just for a frame, a figure appeared. Impossible to describe. Not quite a person. Not quite an animal. Bent. Blurred. As if it was filmed through water. Its limbs didn't align with gravity. Then static. The fire snapped sideways, stretching like a rubber band, and went out. Darkness. Joey was silent for the rest of the clip. The video ended with him turning the camera on himself. His eyes wide. And you see a campfire. And the smoke isn't going up? Don't run. Don't breathe. And don't look sideways. Because if you do, you'll see it. Not the fire. Not the fold. The thing that watches from the other side. Waiting for someone to step through. The mirror that doesn't reflect you. A mirror should show you what's real. But what if it shows what wants to be real, instead? In the ancient Medina of Fez, Morocco, where narrow alleyways twist like veins through thousand-year-old stone, sits a centuries-old riad, abandoned since the 1960s. Local legend called it Beit al-Samt, the House of Silence. No one lived there. No one claimed it. Until July 1998, when a restoration crew from the Moroccan Office of Antiquities was sent to inspect and catalog any salvageable items before the riad was sold to a European developer. The crew was small, 4 men, 1 woman, and a local guide named Abdul Karim, who refused to step inside. He only said one thing. The room upstairs isn't part of the house. Everyone thought he meant it architecturally, like it was added on later. He didn't mean that. He meant it didn't belong. On the second day of the restoration, team lead Noura Belhadi discovered something unusual in the riad's upper floor, a narrow, windowless room with deep red walls and no door handle on the inside. The team assumed it had once been a private study. But at the far end of the room was a large mirror. Framed in aged brass and wood, it stood nearly 7 feet tall and was bolted directly into the stone wall. There was no reflection. Not a dull one. None at all. The team joked it was coated with dust. But when one of them wiped it, technician Hassan Malouf, he staggered back. He said, "It moved before I touched it." The others laughed it off. Noura inspected the surface herself. Smooth. Cold. But when she leaned in, something wasn't right. Her own reflection lagged. By half a second. Then, blinked before she did. She stepped back. Blinked again. The reflection blinked out of sync. It wasn't mirroring her. It was trying to match her. The team decided to cover the mirror with a sheet. Hassan, clearly disturbed, refused to re-enter the room. But Noura, a trained anthropologist, began recording daily notes about the mirror. In her field log, she wrote, "It's not glass. It's not polished. It's hollow. But not behind. Inside." By day 3, the entire team reported strange dreams. Each involved being watched from behind their own eyes. When Noura finally reviewed the photo,